Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 274. Tianyan Pavilion. 1000. Most likely, people would change. Even if they were the same person at the beginning, with the same appearance. However, due to all kinds of fortuitous encounters and various circumstances, after 10 or 20 years, their temperament and circumstances would no longer be completely the same. In fact, when he had planted the curse on Mo Ran, Shi Mei was also the same as Hua Binan, with heart as cold as iron and his will as firm as steel. In his eyes, other than his own revenge and his own pursuit, there was no room for anything else. However, when he looked at the actions of his other self in the other world at that time, a question bloomed in his heart. He suddenly wanted to know if Hua Binan had ever felt the slightest bit of discomfort in his heart, a small bit of guilt. In the end, he still followed Hua Binan's instructions. At this point in time, he had no way to back down. He clearly knew that personal feelings would ruin his plans. There was nothing more important than stabilizing Mo Ran and protecting himself. In any case, he had been acting for so long and wearing a mask for so many years. He was disgusted to the bone, but he had become numb to it. He had to act in accordance with the circumstances, even if it was contrary to what he actually felt. Even if Chu Wanning died, it wouldn't change anything. He just carried the soul-calling lantern given by Master Huizhui and stood by the Nehi Bridge, not going anywhere else. When he couldn't resolutely go through water and tread on fire for the person he loved, he couldn't help but feel envious. If only he could be like Xuemeng and Mo Ran, making decisions for his own life, or thinking that he could make decisions for his own life, that would be good. However, fate was not within his control. He was like a little boy from a pear garden, unwilling but silent as he acted out the role he has been assigned with to completion. In the beginning, he seduced Mo Ran. Mo Ran smiled at him and said, "Shi Mei, I really like you." Later, he used Su Xuanglin. Su Xuanglin lazily tossed oranges and squinted his eyes. "I've been wandering my whole life. I didn't expect to meet a friend like you. Thank you for being willing to teach me the forbidden technique of rebirth. When that trash Luo Fenghua comes back to life, I'll definitely make him cook a bowl of Tang Yuan for you. You don't know, but his Tang Yuan is the best. I'm only willing to give it to you because I think highly of you." In the end, the dagger was revealed. Like the worst-case scenario that he and Hua Binan had discussed earlier, he had no choice but to make some sacrifices of his own to distract his Shizun and friends, so that the gate of time and space, life and death would open smoothly at that critical moment. He used to be the one holding the chess pieces. When the 10 years older version of him came, he became his chess piece. The feeling of being controlled was actually not good. It was not that he did not hate it, but the obsession in his heart was too strong and his desire was too deep. He did not want to give up so easily. However, he really didn't know that the so-called small sacrifice referred to the lives of hundreds of thousands of people and the collapse of the other world. It was only after the gate of time and space, life and death has been opened did he saw the cruel truth. This Shi Mingjing was not that Shi Mingjing after all. He didn't experience those 10 years, didn't experience those days of his downfall. In the end, he really couldn't understand the 10 years older version of himself. But there was no way to retreat. At this moment, he was no more than an abandoned chess piece. Like all the black and white pieces on the chessboard, he had lost his edge and was no longer in a position to be of use. Shizun. The dim light shone on his beautiful face. He was still calm and gentle. "Actually, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I was thinking that if Mo Ran could start all over again and become a different person. I was wondering if I could turn back, would I also make a different choice after knowing my mistake?" The room was very quiet and only his voice could be heard. "But now, it's too late." Shi Mei said, "I know that Shizun already hates me, Mo Ran also hates me, and young master will no longer treat me as a friend. No matter whether I was unwilling or not, I finally became like him. He put his hand on Chu Wanning's hot cheek and quietly gave him healing spiritual power. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Shizun, he said. The only thing I'm thankful for is that I'm blind, so I don't have to see you look at me with hate. After a pause, Shimei smiled, making the room seem to be filled with spring. The last thing I saw was all three of you feeling sorry for me. That's enough. He untied the immortal binding rope on Chu Wanning's hand, removed the forbidden spell on the bed, and then destroyed the barrier on the stone door. After doing this, Shimei turned around and slowly left the secret room. He walked far away and was swallowed by darkness. At the same, in the Qi area where the Tianyan Pavilion was located, the teacher, Mr. Ma, had just returned from the private school. He rubbed his sore shoulders as he entered the room. As usual, he went to the kitchen to make a cup of 8 treasures tea. He pushed the door and entered. It was dark. Mr. Ma couldn't help but frown. He rubbed the lampstand and shouted, "Madam? It's so late, why didn't you even light a candle? You are." With a clank, the fire knife and flint were used and the room was illuminated. Mr. Ma was speechless and stood in the middle of the room in horror. He saw that all the servants in his house had been strangled to death, like a string of wind chimes hanging on the beam. His wife had been cut open, and her bloody intestines flowed all over the floor. Her eyes and mouth were open as her head was turned in the direction of the door. "Ah!" Mr. Ma wanted to shout, but what came out of his mouth was a very vague and weak moan. After a while, his scalp went numb as he screamed miserably, wetting himself from fear. "Ah! Tisk! What are you whining about?" A man came out of the inner room, holding a scroll in his hand. He scratched his neck with the scroll and yawned. "Haven't you seen a dead person before? You. Momo." The man snapped his fingers and explained lazily, "The silencing spell." What spell?" "The silencing spell, you don't even know this." The man rolled his eyes. "This venerable one was reading the classics in your room and knew that it is bad to disturb the neighbor's rest this late in the day. Come. Now you can shout as much as you want. If anyone can hear it, you can blame this venerable one." Mr. Ma's face was as white as a ghost. He was an upstanding man and led a calm life. He had never seen such a bloody scene before. He was already scared out of his wits, sweating all over. After a while, he said in a trembling voice, "Mo. You devil. Devil. You. Shouldn't you be at the Tianyan Pavilion's confessional platform? You. Tianyan Pavilion." The man raised his eyes, which were so dark that they were almost purple, and smiled. Yes, this venerable one went there to see it. Otherwise, how could this venerable one could have heard the teacher's opinion the day before yesterday? As he spoke, he threw the scroll away, straightened his tall body and slowly walked towards the teacher. The candlelight shone on his handsome face. Who else could it be but Taxian Jun? Taxian Jun smiled brightly, showing his deep dimples. He actually saluted to the teacher and said, "This venerable one admires scholars the most. It's rude of me to come here and kill your whole family. Greetings, teacher." This eccentric tone of voice, coupled with the scene of people who had died in vain, he knew that Taxian Jun is not someone he could handle. Even if the man surnamed Ma had 17 or 18 times more courage, he still wouldn't be able to do it. He fell to the ground with a thud and gasped for breath. "What are you doing? What are you going to do?" Taxian Jun just smiled. He raised his hand and a holy weapon appeared in his palm. He looked sideways at the teacher. "Take a guess." "Don't kill me." Mr. Ma screamed and kept moving backward. "Don't kill me." As he moved backward, he bumped into something. He turned his head and saw his wife's open eyes. He cried out, "No, no, no. No, no, don't, please. Don't. Ah, 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 ah. The response was a stab into his thigh that went straight to the ground. Ah. Taxian Jun narrowed his eyes and smiled kindly and sweetly. This venerable one would like to ask. What's the difference between a musician and a prostitute? What? Mr. Ma was stunned. He was in so much pain that he could not think. He just cried, what? You said it yourself. Taxian Jun said slowly, teacher once said it in front of the Tianyan pavilion. Musician and prostitutes are the same. They are all people who do not know self-respect and have no sense of shame. These days, there are actually people who would speak up for whores. I didn't expect that in the upper cultivation world, the morality has fallen to such a low level. He imitated the tone of the teacher's speech. He was calm and composed. After he finished speaking, he paused for a moment and sneered. He turned his handsome face. Does it sound familiar, teacher? Mr. Ma finally had some vague consciousness in the midst of his shock. He remembered that these were the words he had said when he had talked down the person who spoke up for Mo Weio's mother. He hurriedly said with tears and snot, No, I'm just confused. I'm confused. This. He swallowed his saliva, and his face was full of sweat. A prostitute is a prostitute, a musician is musician. No, it's not the same, it's not the same. How is it not the same? I think what you said is very reasonable. Taxian Jun walked over with a fake smile and raised his saber again. Speaking of which, this venerable one's is not very smart and needs some guidance. Since you have such a clever tongue, why don't you give it to this venerable one? No. Grandmaster, please spare me. Please spare me. Mr. Ma said incoherently. He was sweating profusely. Please, I beg you. In light of your great kindness and great benevolence. Taxian Jun smiled. What Grandmaster? Do you have heirs? You should call me Your Majesty. Your Majesty. Mr. Ma was stunned. But who cares, as long as he was alive, he could call him father. Then he said, Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Please spare me, Your Majesty. Please spare me, Your Majesty. Taxian Jun squatted down, pinched his face and said with a smile, Oi, great model of morality, answer this, who is unscrupulous, is it you or is it this venerable one? Me. It's me. But what was the point of sparing his life? Taxian Jun exerted force in his palm and in the midst of his pleas and cries, he broke the teacher's entire throat with a smile. After doing all this, the black-robed man looked around the room and confirmed with satisfaction that no one was alive. Then he stood up, wiped the blood off his hands, and pushed the door open to walk out of the courtyard. Outside, Hua Binan was waiting for him. Are you done venting? More or less. Are you ready to go back to Tianyan Pavilion with me to prepare? Taxian Jun looked at him and replied, Fine. Hua Binan shook his head. I really don't know what to do with you. Why do you have to hold grudge for such a small matter? He only said a few words about your mother, do you have to? Then do you want me to badmouth your mother? Hua Binan's expression changed slightly. Finally, he turned his face away and did not answer. Let's go. Didn't you say that you would put Grandmaster Mo's heart into my body when you get it tomorrow? Then what are you dallying for? I can't wait. As Taxian Jun spoke, his robe flapped as he strode towards the Tianyan Pavilion. The golden light shone through the clouds and the sky soon brightened up. A horrified scream rang out. The bodies of Mr. Moz and his family were discovered by the neighbors who had woken up early. Such a murder case should have caused a big stir in the area of Qi, but it did not. Because at this moment, there was an even more grand event happening. On the execution platform of the Tianyan Pavilion, torches were burning. The wax melted, giving off the fragrance of pine and cypress. Two maids from the Tianyan Pavilion in golden silk robes lit up the lampstands on both sides of the execution platform. Strangely enough, the members of the Tianyan Pavilion were all extraordinarily good-looking. The men were handsome and the women were alluring. It was not known whether this was caused by the teachings of the Tianyan Pavilion or if it was because Mu Yanli valued appearance when she took in disciples. Heaven and earth have their own wisdom. Good and evil will be rewarded accordingly. One after another, bronze candles lit up. The flames were like bright red silk, drifting and swaying. There were people everywhere. On the platform, below the platform, north, south, east and west. The execution ground was tightly packed. Xuemeng sat on the seat allocated for Shi Shangpeak sect, trembling slightly. In these past 3 days, Xue Zhengyang had been appealing to people everywhere, but to no avail. These cultivators believed in the fairness of the holy weapon Tianliang. Moreover, they were scared of Mo Weiyu, who could command the Zhenlong chess formation. He saved us. The people from Shi Shangpeak sect tirelessly tried to explain to everyone who could be persuaded. That day, he sacrificed his spiritual core to save us. If he was plotting something, why would he do this? But there were too many doubts about Mo Ran, so there were still no sects willing to stand on their side. Even the Gaiyu Ye sect and the Taxu Palace opted to remain neutral and kept silent. The foremost forbidden technique that had been lost for thousands of years suddenly reappeared versus the result of the first public hearing and the judgment of Tianliang, which served the cultivation world for thousands of years. Only a fool would choose to believe the former. That was why Xue Zhenjiang's effort seemed so useless and the arguments used by Shi Shangpeak seemed so weak and feeble. Xuemeng had vaguely thought, why don't we break Mo Ran out of prison? But he knew it was impossible. The disciples of Tianyan Pavilion were stationed everywhere. There were also the presence of sect masters and disciples of other sects. Below the platform was a sea of people. Countless pairs of eyes were watching and there was no way to escape. So, digging out the spiritual core while still alive was still Mo Ran's end. The Tianyan Pavilion had publicly announced that the punishment will be carried out in 3 days. The punishment has been decided. Mu Yanli looked down at the endless sea of people solemnly and elegantly. She rang the bell in her hand. Bring the prisoner Mo Ran. From the confessional to the execution platform, Mo Ran was being escorted. A person with a broken spiritual core was being watched by dozens of disciples of the Tianyan Pavilion. They were like vultures knowing that he was going to die. Not many people could survive having their spiritual core dug out while still alive. The vultures smelled blood and their eyes flashed. Mo Ran, who has committed a serious crime, will be punished by having his spiritual core taken away at noon today. Mu Yanli's voice was clear and cold. He was convicted of 10 crimes which I will hereby announce for all to hear. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. Mo Ran stood in the puddle and the shadows of the sky and clouds circled around his feet. He looked up and found Ye Wangzi in the crowd. He stared at her with his dark eyes as if he was asking her a question. He wanted to ask if she had followed his instructions and spoke with the people from Shi Shangpeak. He wanted to ask if she was clear about the things that he couldn't let go of. Ye Wangzi nodded at him. Mo Ran's lips curled into a bright and gentle smile, and his eyes were shining. The weather was good. The rain had stopped. First crime, slaughtering people and disregarding human life. Mu Yanli's voice echoed in the Tianyan Pavilion, solemn and dignified. Second crime, setting fire to an establishment to avenge a personal grievance. The incense in front of the Buddha burned, the divine Buddha in the heavens, either angry or kind, sat down and held their rings, looking down at the masses. All these years, Mo Ran didn't like to look at the sky. If there were really gods in the sky, he was afraid that they would discover his hidden crimes and wrongdoings. But at this moment, he could finally relax. He looked up at the sky. The sunlight washing down on him. It soaked his purplish dark eyes into a light brown glaze, making them seem pure. Mu Yanli's voice sounded so distant. He closed his eyes. He didn't look at the area for Shisheng Peak sect, nor did he look at any of his old friends' faces. Sixth crime, secretly learning the forbidden arts, violating the great precepts. He suddenly thought of something, a hint of regret and affection appeared between his brows. Originally, he wanted to treat Chu Wanning well in this life. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it. Even their real first time together, which he had promised to be something truly special, ended up being a mess. He failed to keep that promise. He really wasn't a good person. He was a jinx, a plague, a lame joke. In his 2 lives. He wanted to protect his mother, but he didn't succeed. He wanted to repay kindness as her mother preached, but things didn't end up as he wanted. When he was a child, he wanted to be a hero. Later, he secretly wanted to be a real nephew to sect leader Shui. When he was at the end of the road, he sacrificed his all so he would not be the cold-blooded and merciless Taxian Jun of the other world. However, they were all in vain. Taxian Jun, Mo Weiyu, Grandmaster Mo. His eyelashes trembled slightly, and his Adam's apple moved. In the end, he sighed with a sneer and regret that only he could hear. You are really the most ridiculous person in the world. With a sigh, he raised his head and gazed towards the sky. The wind ruffled his fine hair. He narrowed his eyes and then thought, where is Chu Wanning right now? Probably because he had received too much and used up all his luck, he would not be able to see him again in the end of this life. Good. He narrowed his eyes and chuckled on the execution platform. At least Wanning would not see him in such a sorry state. The time has come. Prepare for the execution. A majestic chanting was heard and the horn was blown. It was as if a nightmare cast a shadow, as if the sound of prepare for execution came into his eardrum from thousands of miles away. In the secret chamber at Mount Qiao, Chu Wanning suddenly opened his eyes and sat up in shock. Mo ran. The candlelight flickered. He gasped for breath and his clothes were soaked with sweat. He trembled slightly. Almost subconsciously, when he opened his mouth, he said the name that had troubled him for 2 lifetimes. Then, his Adam's apple moved up and down and his eyes were a little blank. He seemed to have seen the shadow of the knife just now and a strong sense of fear rose in him. His heart was like a drum and he didn't know why he was so frightened. Sitting on the bed, he rubbed his face hard with his palms. His sweat gradually cooled down and he came back to his senses. Memories kept flashing in front of his mind, but those memories didn't belong to him. A portion of his soul had stayed in Mo Ran's body for too long, so when it returned to him, it actually brought with it many memories that belonged to Mo Ran. Those memories that were swallowed by the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower and suppressed. Important memories that even Mo Ran himself didn't remember anymore. Chu Wanning saw them all. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 275. Tianyan Pavilion. Broken heart. He saw the child Mo Ran smiling brightly at his mother. He saw Duan Yuhan stroking Mo Ran's head and saying, "You must repay the debt of gratitude, don't hold grudges." He saw Mo Ran holding the box of pastries that Xue Meng had given him. He ate them carefully, not wanting to waste a single crumb. He saw Mo Ran standing in front of the wine shop in Vuchame town, wearing the robes of a new disciple. He handed the crumbs of silver in his pocket to the owner with both hands. Then he smiled shyly and expectantly. "I want a pot of good pear blossom white. Can you give me a better looking wine pot? I want to give it to my Shizun to try." All the memories appeared one after another. The warmest and most beautiful memories that had once been in Mo Ran's heart flashed through his mind like a lantern on a merry-go-round. In the images, Mo Ran was smiling all the time. from his childhood when he was hungry and cold to his youth before the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower bloomed. But these memories were not many. Mo Ran had 2 little happy times in his life. The days when he could laugh to his heart's content could be counted on one hand. Chu Wanning looked at the scenes that were flashing past one by one. Then, everything settled down. Because their souls had been entangled for too long, at this moment, he could clearly feel that before the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower was planted, Mo Ran actually liked him so much, respected him, was deeply attached to him and loved him. Even though he did not like to smile and was even a little harsh when instructing them, he still liked him. But he liked it. It felt familiar and warm. He felt that this icy cold Shizun was actually a very, very good person deep down. Mo Ran actually liked him. At such a young age, he had liked him passionately and innocently. The memories in front of him continued to flow. Chu Wanning followed Mo Ran's memories as it settled into a clear, moonlit night. That night, a lone lamp was lit in the disciples' room at Shi Sheng Peak. Mo Ran sat at the table, facing an open scroll and carefully sewing a white handkerchief in his hand. After sewing a few lines, he clumsily poked his fingertip. Blood dripped and stained the cloth. Mo Ran opened his eyes wide and then looked very depressed. He sighed. It's so hard. The white handkerchief was rolled up and thrown to the side. He took a new one and sewed it again. The candle was lit all night. After throwing away countless handkerchiefs, his hands and feet became nimbler. Slowly, the light red petals bloomed. 1 petal, 2, 5. Every petal was meticulously embroidered, every petal was embroidered with sincerity. The young man clumsily sewed a piece of white handkerchief. With every stitch and thread, hatang flowers bloomed. There was light in his eyes as he looked at the handkerchief. After the embroidery was done, it was actually very ugly. There were a lot of uneven places. It was obvious at a glance that this was the work of a novice. But Mo Ran was unable to contain his joy. He looked left and right excitedly and then threw the handkerchief up. The soft handkerchief floated in the air and landed on his face. It covered his face. He laughed under the cover of the handkerchief and blew on it. The corner of the hatang handkerchief was lifted, revealing his gentle eyes underneath. He looked at the flowing light. I'll give this to Shizun. He'll definitely like it. His heart was filled with warmth. It was a warmth that the demon flower that was planted later could not tolerate and therefore had to suppress it. In the future, every time he uses this handkerchief, he'll think of me. Mo Ran put the handkerchief in his chest. He imagined countless times that Chu Wanning would praise him and be happy. He only felt that the grass was long and the orioles were flying. He could not suppress his happiness. That night, he excitedly ran to Chu Wanning's room and found the man standing by the pond looking at the fish. Shizun. He excitedly ran over. His face was full of radiance. Chu Wanning turned around and was a little surprised. Why are you here? Chu. It was cold. He came out in a hurry and did not wear a cloak. Before the youth could speak, he sneezed first. Chu Wanning said. What's the rush? You even forgot to put on a coat. Mo Ran rubbed his nose and grinned. I can't wait. I have something. If I don't give it to Shizun, I won't be able to sleep. What is it? A gift for Shizun. As he spoke, he carefully took out the folded handkerchief from his chest. When he was about to give it to Shizun, he suddenly became timid and his face turned red. Actually, it's not worth much. It's not very good. After thinking about it, he simply hid the handkerchief behind him. The tips of his feet uneasily stepped on the ground. Chu Wanning. What did you buy? The youth's ears were completely red. He blushed and said, I didn't buy it. I don't have money. Chu Wanning was stunned. You made it yourself. Mo Ran lowered his head. His eyelashes were like clouds. He quietly said, "Yes." Without waiting for Chu Wanning to answer, he hurriedly said, "Forget it. It's actually very, very, very ugly." After saying it again and again, he still felt that it was not enough. When he gathered his courage and looked at Chu Wanning again, he forcefully added, "Very, very ugly." Chu Wanning still remembered how he felt at that time. In fact, he was surprised and pleased. He had never received a gift personally made by someone else. But he was too embarrassed to show it. He was also too embarrassed to smile. He could only school his expression, afraid that this new disciple would see the sweetness in his heart. He lightly coughed and deliberated before saying, "Then, since it's already made, no matter how ugly it is, you should at least let me see it." In the end, Mo Ran still took out the handkerchief. He wanted to present it with both hands, but he felt that the handkerchief was already wrinkled from all that fuss. He hurriedly tried to smooth it out. Just as his face was burning red, a slender hand reached over and took the handkerchief that had embarrassed him to death. All the turmoil and chaos of war thus ceased. Mo Ran was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but say, "Shizun, it's really ugly." At that time, Chu Wanning had not yet developed feelings for Mo Ran. He only remembered that pair of shiny black eyes. They were wet, like sweet rain on a flower. It was very beautiful. Sometimes love comes as swift as lightning and sometimes it was as slow as dripping water eroding a stone. Chu Wanning was the latter type. His heart has been touched bit by the tenderness of this young man. At that time, he didn't know how intense it was and didn't know its lasting effect. When he suddenly woke up, this tenderness had become a quagmire. He was deeply trapped in it. From then on, it was hard to extricate himself. "Is it a handkerchief?" A white handkerchief made of silk. The side was embroidered with hatang flowers. The needlework was delicate and firm. It was somewhat cute. Chu Wanning's empty heart was suddenly touched as if there was a spring in the valley, fallen flowers floated on the spring. He looked at the handkerchief. For a long time, he didn't know what to say. This was the first time he had received such a gift. The person who gave the gift saw that he didn't say anything and thought that he didn't like it. He stuttered as he explained, I embroidered it according to the drawing in the scroll. Actually this kind of handkerchief is sold in town. It's not expensive. The embroidery in it, it's much better than mine." In the end, he was a bit anxious and wanted to ask for the handkerchief back. However, Chu Wanning was a step faster than him. He had already put it inside his robe. "Nonsense, how can I possibly return my disciple gift after it's been received?" The wrinkled handkerchief and the temperature at which Mo Ran was burning was indeed not pretty. In Vuchame town, one could buy 8 pieces of the same design for 10 copper coins. But he felt that this one was precious and didn't want to return it. So, it became the first gift that Mo Ran gave to Chu Wanning in his life. After being afflicted with the curse of the demon flower, whether it was this memory or this handkerchief, Mo Weiyu had forgotten everything. Chu Wanning was shy and not good with words. He didn't specifically mention it. But when he saw that Mo Ran was getting more and more attentive towards Shimei, following him everywhere and giving him at least 80 if not 100 things, he became more and more silent. He didn't want to let Mo Ran see this handkerchief again. That was something that Mo Ran casually gave to him and he treasured it. He remembered. The merging of the earth soul brought back the past. Things like this, one by one, Chu Wanning slowly recalled them all. He stood up, furious more than ever, anxious, sad, and hurting more than ever. His hands were trembling. He finally knew the truth. He knew the whole story. In fact, it wasn't just his wretched childhood. It wasn't just Shimei's bewitchment. It was far more than that. But these most important memories were suppressed by Shimei's curse. 20 years, 2 lifetimes, No one knew what this was like in the beginning. Until today. The truth, the truth. These were the final truths. There was no one on Mount Jiao to stop him. Chu Wanning couldn't care about anything else. He ran towards the foot of the mountain like a madman. He went to the nearest village and asked about Mo Ran's whereabouts. That Grand Master Mo. The villagers didn't know Chu Wanning's identity. They said in a rough voice, "What Grand Master? He's just a beast with two faces." Two faces, beast, sinner, tyrant. He felt dizzy and he felt as if he had been drowned in 2 lifetimes. In his other life, Taxian Jun was grinning at him ferociously, and in this life, Mo Weiyu was smiling at him. That's not true. The truth was not like this. Chu Wanning asked with a pale face, "Where is he?" "At Tianyan Pavilion." The villager said, "Everyone in the upper cultivation world and lower cultivation world knows that this person has committed a heinous crime. Today, his spiritual core will be dug out and he will receive the punishment he deserves." It was as if a mountain rock had split opened, shaking his head. "When is the execution?" Chu Wanning asked too anxiously. His phoenix eyes flashed with light, scaring the villager. I can't remember clearly. I think it's by noon." Noon. He looked at the sundial beside the sunscreen and his expression suddenly changed. The rising dragon talisman broke through the air, setting off strong winds and waves. Chu Wanning ordered the paper dragon to take him to the Qi area. At first, the paper dragon wanted to bicker with its master, but it was shocked to find that Chu Wanning's eyes were watery. The little paper dragon was stunned. "What's the matter with you? Help me." It had never seen Chu Wanning like this before. It didn't know what to do, and only said, "When did this venerable one not help you? Oh, don't cry." Chu Wanning gritted his teeth. He looks angry, but it was an empty fury. The truth was like a worm that had bitten off its spine. "I'm not crying. Take me to Tianyan Pavilion. If we don't hurry, it'll be too late." "What are you going there for?" "To save him." He couldn't stop trembling. He didn't want to cry, but tears still fell. Chu Wanning wiped his red eyes. He has been wrongly judged. If there's someone in this world who deserves to have his spiritual core dug out and be cursed by thousands of people, it shouldn't be him. Chu Wanning said hoarsely, "I have to save him." The paper dragon didn't ask any more questions. It carried him and turned into a giant dragon with towering horns. It roared and soared into the sky. The wind shook the mountains, and for a moment, its whiskers fluttered. The cold fog shattered and it soared in the moist sea of clouds. Chu Wanning sat beside its dragon horns. A strong airflow brushed past his face. It was so cold above the 9th heaven that the blood on his fingertips seemed to be frozen solid. He looked in front of him, looking at the layers of clouds, the layers of mountains and the rivers that flowed endlessly. Everything in the world seemed like yesterday as it flashed past below him. In fact, from the moment he woke up, he felt mad, numbed and fragmented. Now that he had calmed down, he was completely immersed in the sorrow of the past. He curled up on the dragon and slowly buried his face in his palms. The wind was very strong, and it blew past his ears. They wanted to punish Mo Ran. They wanted to cut open his heart and break his spiritual core. Heinous and unpardonable crime, deserving of 10,000 deaths. No. The wind was so loud that it was enough to cover all the happiness, anger, and sadness of all mortals. The sky was high and the clouds were broad. Chu Wanning finally broke down crying in this sorrowful howl of the wind. These 2 lives, be it Taxian Jun or Grand Master Mo. It shouldn't have been like this. Mo Ran was right about one thing. The bow under the sky-piercing pagoda was wrong from the beginning. The sun was rising, and the copper pot outside the Tianyan Pavilion had reached a certain mark. The female official struck the bell and shouted, "It's noon." Birds were startled. "Execute the punishment." He was boarded onto the rack and was bound with the immortal binding ropes. His outer robe was removed and his lapels were opened. Mu Yanli's expression was cold. Holding her holy weapon, she walked forward and stood in front of Mo Ran. Today is the day of your punishment. I hope you will repent. Her lips opened and closed as she recited the ancient chant of the Tianyan Pavilion. The Tianyan is vast and mighty, none can hide from it. The children of the Tianyan sect must not be sentimental. Though the heavenly music is faint, it could not be blasphemed. Tianyan is compassionate and respects all living beings. She lowered her eyes and bowed to Mo Ran. It was to send him off. Then, she unsheathed the dagger. Sparks flew, the holy weapon buzzed as golden feathers scattered in all directions. The light of the dagger reflected in her eyes, but there was no emotion in them. Some people below covered their eyes, some stretched their necks, some closed their eyes and sighed, and some clapped and cheered. There were all kinds of people, that was all. The punishment was to dig out the spiritual core while alive. She raised the dagger and blood splattered everywhere. Dead silence. Then, someone on the stage lost control and shouted, "Tanga!" Red, bright red blood flowed out from the wood made by the holy weapon that had entered his chest. Mo Ran opened his eyes. At first, he didn't feel anything. Then, he stiffly lowered his head and looked at the hideous flesh of his heart. His lips opened and closed, and the pain began to explode like fireworks. In front of him, light and shadow were boiling intensely. Cough, cough. Blood gushed out from his mouth, dripping with the smell of iron. Heaven and earth were vast and mighty, turning into a sea of red. But it was wrong, it was all wrong. Chu Wanning flew on the dragon, getting closer and closer to the Qi area. He used to think that Mo Ran was indifferent to him, messing up the mortal world because of resentment, because of hatred. He used to think that Mo Ran had gradually forgotten the initial tenderness between them after being punished and reprimanded again and again. Actually, that was not the case. Those memories were trapped within Mo Ran's soul. He saw it. Chu Wanning saw through Mo Ran's deepest heart. Under the suppression of the 8 sufferings and everlasting hatred flower, the memories of the tender relationship of the past were buried. That year, Mo Ran was still so young and immature. He still had a warm and healthy heart, beating under his chest. That year, he saw his new Shizun standing by the window of the lacquer wood pavilion. He turned his face to him and said, "Mo Ran, come here." In front of him was a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. "I heard from the sect leader that you still don't know how to write your own name. Pick up the brush, I'll teach you." He taught him. His voice was light, like the apricot flowers outside the window, blooming under the sky. "The sect leader gave you the courtesy name Weiyu, which is the opposite of your name. I'll write it once, look carefully." So, the Shizun wrote in horizontal, vertical, and curved strokes, while the little disciple stood at the side and learned. "I wrote one more dot. There's one less dot this time." He was taught the 2 words 5 times before he finally managed to write it correctly with much difficulty. However, it was shabby as the characters were crooked. Chu Wanning had never seen such a slow-learning disciple. He could not help but feel a little depressed. Is it very difficult? It was not difficult. But at that time, Mo Ran did not dare to tell him that it was because the way he lowered his eyes as he wrote was too pleasant to look at, that he felt greedy to have his fill of such vision again and again, so he deliberately made mistakes again and again. So, he would to keep teaching him again and again. "It's so difficult." Chu Wanning stared at him. "Watch carefully, don't laugh." Mo Ran pursed his lips and smiled. He was genuinely distressed. Then, "Shizun, write it again and teach me again." He really liked the moment when he lowered his head, his phoenix eyes slanted. As long as Chu Wanning held his hand and taught him, he could hear the sound of the hatang flowers blooming outside the window. A high barrier was cast around the execution platform so that no one could interfere with the Tianyan pavilion as they execute the punishment. The dagger holy weapon was sharp enough to cut through metal and it could understand its master's thoughts. Mu Yanli looked indifferent, as if she could not hear Moran's heavy breathing or see that person's face was as pale as a corpse nor see the veins on Moran's forehead bulging and the blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. She only carried out the judgment of the holy weapon Tianliang. She dug out his spiritual core. The dagger pierced into the chest and quickly moved through the flesh. When she found the fragments of the spiritual core, she gathered strength and pulled them out. The dagger was sharp, and it was inevitable that it would cut into the flesh. She did not care at all. She threw the flesh and the shimmering fragments into the silver plate held by the attendant beside her. The female medical cultivator immediately came forward and stopped the surging blood. She pressed against the convulsing heart, so that he would not die. The scale's judgment was to dig out the spiritual core, so Tianyan Pavilion would protect his life. At least he would not die on the platform or during the execution process. They kept him awake, otherwise they wouldn't be able to determine whether he was just unconscious or dying from the pain. Moran watched as his chest was cut open again and again. When fragments of his spiritual core were found, they would suppress the bleeding and heal the wound. Again and again. Xuemeng had already broken down. He was howling, buried his face in his palms as his tears fell like rain. Tanga. He was in so much pain that his soul was blurred and his veins were bulging. But he actually felt liberated. Every time Mu Yanli's dagger fell, piercing his chest and digging out the fragments of his spiritual core, he felt that the sins of his other life and the blood on his hands had faded a little. Would he be forgiven after the pain was over? Would he be able to return to the past after cutting out the remnants of it? But which past? If he returned to that day when he became a disciple under the sky-reaching pagoda, he would still be the fake young master of Shisheng Peak. His mother would have also already starved to death. That happiness would still be an illusion. If he were to return to the woodshed of his childhood, when it was just him and Duan Yuhan relying on each other, he was afraid that due to a combination of circumstances, he wouldn't be able to meet Chu Wanning again. This happiness would also turn into regret. Looking back, he couldn't find a single point in his two lives where he could truly start anew with a clear conscience. He could not find a period of truly carefree days where there were clothes, food, and warmth, even one single day. His two lives, for more than 40 years, did not have a single night of peace. Mu Yanli's dagger was still buried deep in his flesh, enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. He knew that his soul was filthy and his sins were unforgivable. The heavens would surely come for him and judgment would always come. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a little sad. He wanted a mother, a Shizun, a younger brother, an uncle, and an aunt. He wanted a family. However, he was probably too greedy to want so much. So, in the end, he had nothing. The happiness he knew and the warmth that he had were all fake in the end. It was like trying to hold water in a basket or holding sand in his hands. He used everything to make up for it, but he could not get anything. He stood beside the long river of life, hugging his small, wet basket. He squatted down but the basket was empty. He stared blankly at the surging river and the passing of time. In fact, from the beginning, he only had this small basket, and he held it. It was a dream that was bound to shatter. End chapter.